daughter cut me from her wedding I paid for. So I cancelled everything behind her back and watched her burn. Hey guys, this is probably going to be a long one. I'm a 57-year-old man, and I never thought I'd be posting something like this, but I really need to get this off my chest because it's been eating me up inside for weeks now. I'm not really sure where else to turn, to be honest. This is about my daughter, K, 27F, and how she basically ripped my heart out, which led to me doing something pretty extreme that I'm still kind of conflicted about. A little background, because it matters. K is my only child from my first marriage. Her mom left when K was 7, ran off to Europe with some guy named Tom. I raised K by myself for 5 years before I met my current wife, Jenna, 45F. Not gonna lie, those 5 years were rough. I was a single dad, trying to run a business and raise a kid who was seriously struggling with her mom abandoning her. Anyway, about 2 months ago, Kay told me she was getting married to this guy, Ben. Now, Kay and I have had a ton of problems over the years, seriously, you wouldn't believe the stuff I've had to deal with, but when she told me about the wedding, I was genuinely happy for her. Finally, something good, you know. She seemed really into this Ben guy, and I thought maybe she was finally getting her life together. The thing is, Kay and Ben were basically broke. She only got a decent job last year, and before that, they had been living off my money. Yeah, I know, I probably enabled her too much. They couldn't afford anything more than a courthouse wedding, so I did what any dad would do, I offered to pay for the whole thing as a wedding gift. Venue, catering, flowers, music, the works. We're talking about a $50,000 wedding here. Not trying to brag, but I run an export business that's been in my family for 2 generations, so I could afford it. I remember the day we sat down to talk about the wedding plans, Kay actually seemed happy, like, genuinely excited. First time I'd seen her like that in years. She was showing me all these Pinterest boards and Instagram posts of wedding ideas she liked. For a minute, it felt like maybe we were finally going to have the father-daughter relationship I'd always wanted. The wedding planner she picked was this guy who had done a bunch of fancy weddings in our area, real professional, had a whole team and everything. Kay went to all these meetings with him, picking out decorations and stuff. I just paid the deposits and let her handle it all. Figured it was her day, you know. Plus, I was crazy busy with work, and honestly, what do I know about wedding planning? I remember texting her one night after she sent me some pictures of the venue, a gorgeous place by the lake, really fancy. I told her I was proud of her and couldn't wait to walk her down the aisle. She just sent back a thumbs up emoji. Should have known something was off right there, but I guess I was too caught up in the whole thing to notice. Everything seemed fine for about a month and a half. Kay was doing all the wedding prep, I was paying all the bills, which, by the way, kept getting bigger, like, who needs a chocolate fountain and an ice sculpture, and I figured we were good. I even started working with my tailor to get a nice suit made. Jenna was helping me pick out colors and everything. She's always been really supportive of Kay, even though Kay has been nothing but nasty to her for years. But then, little things started feeling off. Jenna's cousin ran into one of Kay's friends at a cafe and mentioned how excited we were for the wedding. Apparently, Kay's friend looked confused and said, "Oh, I thought she wasn't inviting them." She said she had to cut out toxic family members for her mental health. Jenna's cousin asked what she meant, and the friend just awkwardly mumbled something about a really traumatic childhood before changing the subject. At the time, I brushed it off, thinking maybe she misunderstood. But man, I should have paid attention right then. Everything really started falling apart when my brother, Joe, called me around this time asking about the wedding date because he needed to book flights. I figured I'd just call the wedding planner real quick to add him to the guest list, should have been simple. But the guy started acting weird on the phone, saying stuff like, "Oh, I'm sorry, sir, but the guest list is already full, and I'll need to check with the bride about any changes." Now I'm thinking, what the hell? I'm literally paying for everything, and this guy is acting like he needs permission to add one person. So I push back a little, asking him to just send me the full guest list so I can see what we're working with. The dude starts stammering, saying he's not authorized to share that information with anyone. That's when I lost it a bit, not gonna lie, I probably could have handled this better. I told him straight up that I'm the one signing his checks, and either he sends me that list, or I'm calling his boss. Yeah, I know, that was kind of Karen behavior, but something felt really off. He finally caved and emailed me the list. My name wasn't on it. My wife, Jenna's, name wasn't on it. But you want to know what the real knife in the gut was? Right there, in black and white. Father of the bride, Tom. To walk the bride down the aisle, Tom. Fucking Tom. The same guy who helped my ex-wife abandon our 7-year-old daughter. The same guy who told my ex he wasn't ready to be a father when they moved to Europe. The guy who literally looked me in the face before leaving and said, "Kay is your problem now." And that's when it clicked. This wasn't just about me not being invited. This was about replacing me. About erasing me completely. And the worst part? Kay had already been spreading lies to justify it. I called my sister, my parents, hell, even some of our extended family. Every single one of them had heard some version of the same story, that I was emotionally abusive, that I never supported her, that I was controlling and manipulative. She had been laying the groundwork for this for months, probably telling Ben's family the same thing. Spinning some bullshit sob story about how I was a neglectful father so they wouldn't question why she cut me off. I must have stared at that email for an hour, hoping I was reading it wrong. But nope. The wedding planner even forwarded me Kay's original emails. She had specifically instructed them to keep me and Jenna out of the venue. Had a whole section about security protocols and everything. So here I was, $50,000 deep into my daughter's wedding, and I find out I'm not even allowed to attend. Not only that, she was having the guy who abandoned her walk her down the aisle instead of me. The guy who hadn't sent her so much as a birthday card in 20 years. I'm not going to pretend I handled it well. I went on a pretty bad bender for about a week. Like, taking shots for breakfast kind of bender. Jenna was really worried, kept trying to get me to eat something, but I just couldn't. Just sat in my home office, staring at that email and drinking myself stupid. I called Kay probably 50 times that week. All straight to voicemail. Left a bunch of messages. Started out calm. Got progressively more angry. More emotional. Real embarrassing stuff, looking back. But like, what do you even say to your kid when they do something like this? The worst part was watching Jenna try to process it all. She's been in Kay's life for 14 years. Helped me get her through high school, college, 2 rehab stays, yeah, that's a whole other story. Always defended Kay when people talked shit about her behavior. And this is how Kay repays her. Meanwhile, the wedding planner kept sending me bills. Regular updates about payments due for flowers, catering, deposits, all that crap. Each one was like a fresh slap. Kay was still out there, planning her perfect wedding like nothing was wrong, using my money to throw a party I wasn't even allowed to attend. I found out later that she was at her bachelorette party that week. Saw pictures on my niece's Instagram. She looked so happy. Partying with her friends. Not a care in the world. Meanwhile, I was sitting at home, having a complete breakdown, trying to figure out where I went so wrong as a father that my kid would do this to me. Yeah, I know, I probably sound pathetic. A 57-year-old man, crying over his daughter being mean to him. But man, nothing prepares you for this kind of betrayal. I've had business partners screw me over. Gone through a nasty divorce. Dealt with all kinds of shit. But this? This hit different. I kept thinking about all the times I imagined walking her down the aisle. How I managed to stay in her life despite all the drama, the fights, the midnight calls from police stations and hospitals. How I never gave up on her, even when everyone told me I should. And now, she was choosing Tom. Tom. After a week of feeling miserable and leaving probably the most embarrassing voicemails ever, seriously, listening back to them makes me cringe, I finally sobered up enough to realize I needed to confront Kay face to face. Jenna tried to talk me out of it. Said I should wait until I calmed down more. But I couldn't just sit there anymore. So, I drove over to Kay's apartment. It's this fancy place that, surprise, I helped them afford until she finally got a job last year. The whole drive over, I was rehearsing what I was gonna say, trying to stay calm. But man, my hands were shaking so bad I could barely steer. I got to her place around 6 p.m. Rang the bell. 5 times. Before she finally answered through the intercom. "Dad, I'm really busy with wedding prep right now." That's all she said. Wouldn't even buzz me up. Like I was some door-to-door salesman or something. I'm not proud of what I did next, but I kind of lost it. Started pushing all the other buzzers until someone let me in. Took the elevator up to her floor. And I could hear her and Ben arguing through the door. Then Ben opened up, looking super uncomfortable. And there was Kay. Standing in their living room, that I furnished, by the way, surrounded by wedding magazines and sample centerpieces. She looked at me like I was something stuck to her shoe. "What do you want?" I tried to keep it together. Really, I did. I asked her, calmly, why she didn't tell me about Tom walking her down the aisle. Her response. She smirked. Actually smirked. And said. "At least he never replaced Mom." I just stood there. What? This dude literally abandoned her. Hasn't contacted her in 20 years. And I'm the bad guy for remarrying after 5 years of being a single dad. Then she hit me with this gem. "Well, now you know. Good for you. Saves you the travel time and expense. I'll send you photos if I get around to it." Said it so casually. Like she was talking about canceling lunch plans or something. Ben just stood there, looking like he wanted to disappear. Then she hit me with. "I had to set boundaries, Dad. You've always been controlling. This is my wedding, and I won't let you ruin it like you ruined everything else in my life." At first, I thought she was just being dramatic. Then Ben spoke up. "Kay told me you had some anger issues when she was younger," he said. "Oh my God. She told me you used to yell at her all the time, threatened to send her away if she misbehaved." Ben kept going. "That you never really supported her. Just tried to control everything she did." I just stood there, stunned. Kay had convinced her own fiancé that I was some kind of abusive monster. I started asking Kay how she could do this to me. How she could do this to Jenna. She cut me off. "Oh, here we go with the Jenna drama again. Poor Dad and his precious Jenna. Did you ever think that maybe I didn't want your replacement wife at my wedding?" That's when I noticed something. There was a framed photo of her and Tom on her coffee table. A recent photo. Turns out, they had been in contact for months. She had been planning this whole thing behind my back, using my money to fund a wedding where she could play happy family with the guy who threw her away. I asked her, straight up, "What did I do that was so horrible that you'd rather have Tom walk you down the aisle?" Her response. "You're being dramatic. This is exactly why I didn't tell you. You always make everything about your feelings. This is my wedding. My choice. You're just the checkbook. Just. The checkbook. 20 years of being there for every crisis. Every meltdown. Every rehab stay. Every midnight emergency. And that's all I am to her. A checkbook." I looked at Ben and said, "Good luck, man. You're gonna need it." Then I left. The whole confrontation probably lasted 15 minutes, but it felt like hours. Drove home in a daze. I had to pull over at one point because I was hyperventilating. Called Jenna to come get me because I couldn't drive anymore. When Jenna picked me up, she took one look at my face and knew. Just knew. She drove us to get ice cream, like we used to do when Kay was little and having a bad day. Didn't say anything. Just let me sit there, eat my sundae, and try not to completely fall apart in public. After that confrontation at her apartment, I couldn't let it go. Called Kay the next day. And she actually picked up. Probably by accident. I started asking her, what did I do that was so terrible? I don't know why I acted like that. But I needed to know the answer. And she went off. Like 20 years of built-up resentment just came pouring out. According to Kay, I'm the worst father in history because I rubbed a stepmom in her face. Never mind that I waited 5 years after her mom left before even thinking about dating. 5 years of being a single dad, running a business, and dealing with a kid who was acting out more and more. And Jenna? Jenna has been nothing but good to Kay. Like, above and beyond good. When Kay got caught with pills in high school, yeah, that happened, Jenna was the one who found her a counselor. When Kay was flunking out, Jenna spent hours tutoring her. But according to Kay, Jenna is just some gold digger who stole her dad. Then she brought up something else. An incident from when she was living with my sister. See, after some really rough patches, I thought maybe Kay needed a change of scenery. My sister has a daughter the same age. I figured maybe being around a cousin would help. Nope. Kay started bullying my niece. Bad. Like, making this poor kid's life hell. When I confronted Kay about it, she expected me to take her side. Got super pissed when I wouldn't defend her behavior. According to her yesterday, that was me choosing other people over my own daughter. She conveniently forgets all the times I did choose her. Like when she got caught with those pills at school, I fought like hell to keep her from getting expelled. Called in every favor I had. When her grades were too bad for any decent college, I pulled strings with business contacts to get her in somewhere good. And then there's the money stuff. God, the money stuff. Do you guys know how expensive rehab is? Because I do. Twice. First time was right after college and she got heavy into pills again. Second time was a year later. Each time, I dropped everything to help her. Maxed out credit cards. Took out loans. Whatever it took. She lived with us until last year. Never paid a dime in rent. I paid for her car. Her phone. Her credit cards. Everything. Even after all the screaming matches. All the times she called Jenna horrible names. All the 3 a.m. crisis calls. I kept supporting her. Because that's what dads do, right? But yesterday, she had the nerve, the absolute nerve, to tell me I owed her this wedding. That paying for it was the least I could do after ruining her life by remarrying. When I reminded her that I was doing her a favor by paying $50,000 for this wedding, she got defensive. Said any decent father would want to give their daughter her dream wedding. I lost it. Told her she was acting entitled and ungrateful. Bad move. She started bringing up every single thing I've ever done wrong, in her eyes. How I abandoned her by going on business trips when she was little. You know, the trips that paid for everything she had. How I chose Jenna over her by defending Jenna when Kay called her racist names. Yeah. That happened too. Jenna's Middle Eastern. And Kay has said some really nasty stuff about that. But the final straw. She said she wished her mom had taken her to Europe instead of leaving her with me. That's when I knew. 20 years of trying to be a good dad. And she'd rather have been with the people who abandoned her. After that call, I was just broken. Jenna found me crying in my office. It was the first time Jenna had ever seen me like that, completely broken. And Jenna, saint that she is, just sat with me. Didn't say anything. Just stayed. That's when Jenna finally snapped. Not at me, at the situation. In 14 years of marriage, I had never seen her actually angry. Frustrated? Sure. But angry? Never. She kept saying stuff like, we need to protect ourselves. Kay needs to learn she can't treat people like this. Jenna's a teacher, works with troubled kids. She said Kay's behavior was classic narcissistic entitlement or something like that. I just sat there, staring at the wedding bills piling up on my desk, venue deposit, $15,000, catering advance, $8,000, flowers, $5,000, DJ, $3,000, all this money for a wedding I wasn't even allowed to attend. A wedding where my own kid was going to parade around with Tom, pretending to be one big happy family. Something in me just snapped. The next morning, I called my bank, trying to stop payments on everything. But most of the deposits were non-refundable. Whatever. I didn't care about the money at that point. I just wanted to stop this whole thing from happening. I started with the venue. Called them up, explained that I was the one who paid the deposit and wanted to cancel. They were actually pretty understanding once I explained the situation. The manager even shared a story about his own kid cutting him off. Misery loves company, I guess. Next, I canceled the catering. Then the flowers. The DJ. The photographer. Everything, except the wedding planner. I didn't want Kay finding out and making new arrangements. Petty? Yeah, probably. But I was so hurt and angry I couldn't think straight. There was a moment when I almost backed out. I saw a picture of Kay on my desk from her high school graduation. She was actually smiling in it, one of the last times I remember her being genuinely happy. I almost called everything off right there. But then I remembered how she smirked when she told me about Tom. How she called Jenna those horrible names. How she said I was just the checkbook. I kept going. The dress was already paid for, and she had it at her place, so I left that alone. I'm not completely heartless. Plus, it was the one thing she'd actually been excited about, picking it out with her friends. You know what's really messed up? While I was canceling everything, I kept getting automated emails from the wedding planner about upcoming deadlines. Final menu selection due. Time to choose your father-daughter dance song. Each one was like a knife in the gut. Jenna sat with me through all the cancellation calls. I think she was worried I'd back out if she left me alone. She even handled some of the calls when I got too choked up to talk. I remember her telling the florist, "No, we don't want to reschedule. We want to cancel completely." The whole time, I kept thinking about how Kay would react when she found out. Part of me wanted her to hurt like I was hurting. The bigger part of me just felt tired. So damn tired of always being the bad guy in her story, no matter what I did. Funny thing is, this wasn't even the most expensive thing I'd ever paid for with Kay. Both of her rehab stays cost more. But this felt different. This wasn't me helping her through a crisis. This was her using me while actively trying to hurt me. After it was all done, I just sat in my office, staring at the wall. We didn't talk much. What was there to say? Just sat there, thinking about how it had come to this, me sabotaging my own daughter's wedding. The wedding planner kept calling about final arrangements. I let it all go to voicemail. Figured he'd find out soon enough when everyone showed up to a cancelled venue. Is it bad that part of me was actually looking forward to the chaos that would happen on the wedding day? Probably. But at that point, I was past caring. The wedding day started normal enough. Jenna and I were at home, just sitting there, trying to act like it was a regular Saturday. But we both kept checking our phones every 5 minutes. It was like watching a timer countdown to an explosion. Around 10 a.m., my niece started blowing up my phone. Apparently, the wedding planner and his team had shown up at the venue to start setting up, but security wouldn't let them in. They showed them the cancellation paperwork and everything. The wedding planner freaked out. Started calling Kay, calling me. Calling everyone. I didn't answer, obviously. Then Kay showed up at the venue around 11. Already in her wedding dress. Full hair and makeup. Ready for photos. My niece said she looked really pretty, which just made everything worse somehow. When security told her the venue was cancelled, she completely lost it. Started screaming at the security guards, insisting there must be some mistake. Tried to force her way in. Guards had to physically stop her from rushing past them. My niece said Kay was screaming, "Do you know who my father is?" Which is ironic, considering she didn't even want me at the wedding. And the best part? Tom never showed up. Like, at all. Mr. I'll walk you down the aisle didn't even bother to come. My niece said Kay kept calling him, but it went straight to voicemail. Guess some people never change, huh? Then Ben, the fiancé, showed up. And things got even more intense. Kay was trying to climb over a decorative fence to get into the venue. Her dress was getting all muddy. Ben was trying to stop her before she got arrested for trespassing. The wedding planner was on the phone with his boss, having a complete meltdown. And then, all the guests started showing up. Like, 200 people. All dressed up. With nowhere to go. Cars backed up down the street. Everyone confused. Calling Kay. Calling each other. Total chaos. The catering trucks arrived, blocking traffic because no one had told them about the cancellation. 3 huge vans sat in front of the venue while Kay was still screaming at security, guests stood around confused, and the wedding planner looked like he was about to have a stroke. That's when Kay finally figured out what had happened. My niece said she just went quiet all of a sudden, like, scary quiet. Then she started laughing like a crazy person and shouted to everyone, "My father did this. He ruined everything." She tried calling me, probably 50 times. Left voicemails that got progressively more unhinged. I didn't listen to them until much later, but when I did, holy shit. She threatened to kill me. To kill Jenna. To burn our house down. Real psycho stuff. Around 1 p.m., she showed up at our house. Still in her wedding dress. Which was completely ruined by that point, muddy, ripped, makeup running down her face. But she couldn't get past the gate because I had deactivated her access code. She started leaning on the horn of her car, just holding it down for 10 straight minutes. Our neighbors called the cops. By the time they showed up, she was out of her car, throwing rocks at our security cameras, screaming about how I ruined her life. The cops had to basically drag her away. Ben looked like he wanted to die from embarrassment. I watched the whole thing on our security cameras. Jenna kept telling me to stop watching. But I couldn't. This was my daughter out there, having a complete mental breakdown in a muddy wedding dress. Worst day of my life, honestly. The whole time, I kept thinking about how this wasn't what I wanted. Yeah, I wanted to teach her a lesson. But watching her fall apart like that was rough. Really rough. The wedding planner called me later about final payments. Told him to take it up with Kay. He started complaining about his reputation being ruined. I hung up. Way past caring at that point. I found out later that some of the guests went to Kay and Ben's apartment for an impromptu reception, with grocery store cake. Real depressing stuff. The days after the wedding were intense. Like, nuclear fallout intense. First, my parents showed up at our house the next morning. They're in their 70s and had to drive 3 hours to get here. My mom was pissed. Started going off about how we never turn our backs on family and what kind of father ruins his daughter's wedding. Dad just sat there, looking disappointed. Which, honestly, felt worse than mom's yelling. I tried explaining everything, about Tom, about Kay blocking us from the wedding, about how she completely cut me out. Mom wasn't having it. Kept saying stuff like, she's just confused. You're the parent. You need to be the bigger person. Easy for her to say. Kay has always been an angel around them. Then they dropped the bomb. They offered to pay for a new wedding. Like, completely take over the costs so Kay could reschedule everything. My own parents. Going behind my back like that. That hurt. Really hurt. But Kay. She managed to make it even worse. When my parents went to her place to tell her about paying for a new wedding, she completely lost it on them. Started screaming about how they were taking my side and betraying her, just like everyone else. And then, get this, she actually blamed them for her drug problems. Said they exposed her to pills in high school and ruined her life. Which is total bullshit, because it was her teacher who told me about the pills. My parents had no idea. She told them, and I'm quoting my mom here. Get the fuck out and never come back. She screamed that at my 75-year-old mother. The woman who has a heart condition. The woman who watched Kay every summer and spoiled her rotten. That's when my parents finally saw what I've been dealing with. Mom called me crying later that night. Apologizing for not believing me. Said she couldn't recognize the angry woman who had screamed at her. That's not our Kay, she kept saying. Yeah, Mom. I know. After that, the family started taking sides. My sister, the one Kay lived with during high school, backed me up completely. She had seen firsthand how Kay could be. But my brother, Joe, thought I went too far. Started this whole family civil war. Thanksgiving's gonna be real fun this year. Then there's Jenna's family. They've never really liked Kay. Wonder why. But they tried to stay neutral over the years. After all this, though, they're done. Jenna's mom called Kay some words in Arabic that I probably shouldn't repeat. Even my friends are split. Business partners looking at me sideways, like they're wondering if I'm stable. Got quietly removed from the country club board. Guess ruining your daughter's wedding isn't a good look. Even if she deserved it. But the worst part? I found out Kay has been telling everyone that I did this because I'm racist against Ben's family. Which is ridiculous. Jenna is literally Middle Eastern. And Ben's family? Just regular white people from Ohio. But the story's spreading. Lost some contracts over it. My secretary quit. Reading all these fake stories about myself online. Watching my reputation tank. It's surreal. And through all of this, there's this voice in the back of my head saying, "You did this. You're the adult." I can't sleep most nights. I just lie there, wondering if I went too far. If I should have just sucked it up and paid for the wedding like a good dad. Then I remember how she treated my parents. These sweet, old people who have done nothing but love her. How she made my mom cry. And suddenly, I don't feel so guilty anymore. Jenna has been my rock through all of this. She caught me looking at old baby pictures of Kay the other night. Just sat with me. Didn't say anything. I think she's hurting too, but she's trying to stay strong for me. Then I found out, through my niece's Instagram, that Kay and Ben had a small wedding about a month after the disaster I caused. Just them and maybe 20 friends. Some backyard barbecue thing. Tom didn't show up for that one either. Shocker. At least they got married, I guess. Life went back to normal-ish. Jenna and I tried to move on. I threw myself into work. Was actually starting to feel okay about everything. Then last week, I got a call from an unknown number. It was Ben. My heart basically stopped. I thought something had happened to Kay. But nope. Turns out, things were way more messed up than I ever imagined. Ben wanted to meet for dinner. Wouldn't tell me why over the phone. Just said he needed to talk. I probably should have told him to fuck off. But curiosity got the better of me. Told Jenna I was meeting him. She wasn't happy about it. Still, I went. Downtown bar. And guys, holy shit. Turns out, Kay and Ben separated 3 months ago. Why? Because she had been terrorizing him. Throwing plates during arguments. Breaking his stuff. Screaming at him for hours. Sound familiar? According to Ben, she completely lost it after they moved to a new city for his job. Even though she got a similar paying job there, she blamed him for isolating her from her friends. Started acting paranoid, saying everyone was against her. But what I didn't expect. Ben apologized to me. Said he saw how Kay treated me and Jenna before the wedding, but didn't say anything because she had manipulated him into thinking we deserved it. His words, not mine. He admitted he should have seen the red flags. Said Kay love-bombed him at first, was super sweet and fun. Then, slowly, she started showing her real self after they moved in together. By the time the wedding drama happened, he was already walking on eggshells around her. And get this. She even threw a fit because he wanted to invite his sister to their small backyard wedding. Said she was trying to take over everything, just like Jenna did. His sister. At his own wedding. Ben asked if I'd help get Kay into therapy. Said she's been spiraling since their separation. Calling him 50 times a day. Showing up at his work. He still cares about her but can't handle the abuse anymore. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to tell him, welcome to my last 20 years. But he looked so broken. So genuinely worried about Kay. Reminded me of myself at his age. So yeah. I went to see Kay. Jenna begged me not to go alone. But I didn't want her to have to deal with Kay's crazy. Bad decision. Kay's apartment was a mess. Like, concerning level of mess. She started screaming the moment she saw me. Called me every name in the book. Blamed me for Ben leaving. For her mom leaving. For literally everything wrong in her life. I tried to stay calm. Told her she needed help. That she could say whatever she wanted about me, but she needed to see a therapist. At first, she just laughed. Then she said something that chilled me to my bone. She said she hated Jenna so much, she wanted to kill her. Not like casual hate. She had this look in her eyes that scared the shit out of me. I left pretty quick after that. Called Ben from my car. Told him I tried, but there's nothing I can do. She's too far gone. But I couldn't just give up completely. I reached out to Kay's old best friend from high school. Her family used to be our neighbors. She lives in South Africa now, but they kept in touch. I asked her to try talking to Kay about getting help. Surprisingly, it worked. Kay agreed to therapy. Even apologized to my parents last week. Though she still says she'll never forgive me or Jenna. I don't know what happens next. The daughter I raised is still in there somewhere, buried under all that anger and hate. But I can't be the one to save her anymore. Had to learn that the hard way. Just wanted to update you all. Thanks for the support over the past year. Special thanks to the other parents who shared similar stories. Helped me feel less alone in all this. Guess the moral is: sometimes, you can love someone with all your heart. And still need to let them go. Shit hurts though.